While the vast majority of demonstrations remained peaceful, there were individuals who sought to exploit yesterday's events to commit criminal acts. Unfortunately for them, they were promised that the law will take its course. They are quickly discovered. The law enforcement was on their heels and ready to act proportionally and decisively.
This is the voice of the police's Lieutenant General Bongekile Macupe assessing the aftermath of the June 30th anti-immigration marches. Most demonstrations were peaceful, but others weren't, as criminals took their chances. 900 people have been arrested, most of whom are undocumented immigrants, and many others for looting shops.
Some were arrested for public violence, some for harboring illegal immigrants in terms of Immigration Act, some for business robbery at spaza shops.
Coming up in the show, we take stock of the day that was with Deputy Politics Editor Bongekile Macupe in Johannesburg and journalist Sakhiseni Nxumalo in Durban.
Police were so quick. It was like they could smell when there was trouble. And the police came and they took that man.
Apparently, 5 guys were arrested after they attempted to break into one of the shops and attempted to loot the shop. But the police responded early and those guys were arrested.
We'll end off with On This Day in SA History. It's our regular segment, and it just so happens to be the late Sir Seretse Khama's birthday. My name's Graham Robenheimer, this is The Lead, and this is the South African Story. Moving to our top story today, well, joining us now for a post-mortem of June 30th is our Deputy Politics Editor, Bongekile Macupe, who reported on events in Johannesburg. How's it, Bongi? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Graham. Thank you for having me. It's nice, always lovely chatting to you.
You too. Of course, you can also see her and hear her on our other show, Real Politiki, which comes out weekly these days and doing very well. And of course, we're also joined by our Durban-based journalist, Sakhiseni Nxumalo, who's had a couple of really busy weeks in the run-up to the June 30th events. Unjani, Saki, how are you doing?
Hi, Graham. Hi, everyone. No, I'm good. Just had a rough day yesterday, but it's one of those.
Yeah, Saki, we just got word now as we speak, guys, from the Natjoins, Bongekile Macupe, representing the SAPS, of course, been giving updates before and after in terms of the number of marches and, the high police presence that we've seen across the country. Look, for the most part, we've been reporting that things were largely peaceful up and down Mzansi. But, by the point that I left the newsroom last night, closer to midnight, it hadn't, in terms of our reporting, yet, caught up to the various reports of looting that we had experienced overnight. And now police are telling us that there were around 120 marches nationwide, but there were more gatherings and demonstrations, and that brings that total of gatherings to 300. And of these, only 12 were categorized as unrest. And I think one of those were definitely Johannesburg, and we'll get to that in a second with Bongekile. But Saki, for the most part, Durban, a huge groundswell of support there in the anti-migrant marches there, but peaceful nonetheless, right?
Yes, indeed. In Durban, it was very much peaceful. We had an incident in Hammersdale early in the morning where apparently 5 guys were arrested after they attempted to break into one of the shops and attempted to loot the shop. But the police responded early and those guys were arrested. But all in all, in the march, it was thousands of people that were present here. There was a lot that was anticipated, considering that Durban has been like the hotspot, and that is where everything actually started. We had leaders. Jacinta was here, Pagelo Mtsagat was also here, but they dealt well with the crowd. There was no incident or violent incident that was reported throughout the march. We marched for like 7 kilometers from Bria to South Beach Point. And along the route, there was no incident of violence or any attempt at looting.
Good. Any reports of intimidation? I know sometimes that sort of falls under the radar. And of course, you can't have eyes everywhere to sort of monitor these things. But intimidation was seemingly the hallmark in some, not all, but some of the demonstrations seen elsewhere in the country. Any word of that in Durban?
No, there were those few incidents where obviously the protesters, while they were marching, they would see people inside their flats, and then there would be those small words exchanged, but nothing too serious. I mean, I was at the forefront. We were leading with those high police presence there, including private securities. There wasn't much any incident or of intimidation per se, or that actually took place. I mean, there was an incident. There was a time where we were passing just a road away where Umbilo, where we know that there are about over 400 Congolese that are there. But they didn't go to the route. They maintain and stick to their route.
Right. One of the key people as part of the Durban demonstrations was Nkosi Langa Libalele, local municipality mayor Mduduzi Mjeza. You spotted him in the Durban crowd. You quickly, got an interview with him. And he basically stated, outright, why he was there joining the various other protesters, calling for, illegal migrants to vacate South Africa. And of course, he has this court case brought against him by Kopanong Africa and others for his calls for foreign-owned shops and for those owners to vacate Escort. What did he tell you in a nutshell when you caught up with him on the day?
Yeah, no, we did have a conversation with him, and he basically told me that he understands that he has this legal challenge and against him, where he was taken to court by foreign nationals after he gave them a deadline of 21 days to leave Escort. Obviously, he was taken to court, and then he was ordered to take down some of the posts that he had shared on his Facebook, of which he did, and he's going back to. He told me that he's going back to court on this month on July 20, where he will be expected to appear before court. But he told me that, for him, he has been since the start being against undocumented foreign nationals. And he was here in Durban to show support to Jacinta, because they've also shown support to him when he was appearing in court. You remember that in court, he was represented by Jacinta's husband, Mr. Zuma, whom we know is an attorney. So he told us he was there to support Jacinta, and he still maintains that undocumented foreign nationals should leave his town in Escort and also should leave the country.
Yeah, Saki, stick around. We'll come back to you in the next short while. I know Bongekile is hankering to get part of the conversation. Bongekile, you were out and about in the inner city. You followed the marches, moving from Braamfontein, Hillbrow, and then Yeoville. We know how Yeoville's complexion has changed so drastically over the years. And here, these incidents of, as you so succinctly put in your reporting, one or two people that might be going in the opposite direction of the march, they suddenly get targeted, and then, chaos starts unfurling. Take us to, those moments as you saw them.
Graham, I have to say to you and Sakhiseni that for the first time since I bought my iPhone, I was able to close my rings yesterday because of the walking that I had to do. But look, that part of the march in Johannesburg was supposed to start in Beyersnodie Square, and it was supposed to start at 9. But I was already at Beyersnodie Square by 8, and there was literally no one. I think I counted about 10 people who were there, and went around the city covering other parts of the city. And in no time, Graham, I can't explain this. Then there was just these thousands of people that just appeared from nowhere. I think the time was around 11. And they were coming from different groups. The other one was coming from Beyersnodie Square, then the other one was coming from the Nelson Mandela Bridge. And they marched, of course, through Braamfontein. And it was okay. When they were marching through Braamfontein, they were peaceful, just singing, those in the car, hooting their cars and all of that. It was okay. And there was just a shift that happened when we got to Hillbrow. I don't know what happened, but when we got to Hillbrow, things started becoming a bit chaotic. So one of the things that I witnessed, and of course there were people who've been swearing at me on X even this morning about what I had shared on a post, a video I had shared where the marchers were throwing stones in the flats in Hillbrow. And some colleagues had seen people occupying the flats, throwing stones to the marchers. But I didn't experience that. I experienced when marchers were throwing stones to people in the flats and calling them out to say, Abahambe, come out. We know that illegal immigrants are the ones that are occupying the flats. And then at some point, there was confusion on where they were supposed to go. And you could hear even amongst them, there were those who were asking, where are we going? You know, we've been walking and there seems to be no direction on where they are going. And then things, Graham and Sakhiseni, took a completely different turn when we got to Yeoville. So this is where now, when they were seeing people going the opposite direction, they were demanding to know, who are you? Where are you going? So it first happened with a young man. He had his earphones on. He's probably about 19 or whatever. He was walking the opposite direction when these men approached him and they asked him, where are you going? And I think he tried to explain where you were going. And literally you could see the fear in his face. And they were like, no, we are marching. You have to go with us. Where are you from? And then I could hear, because I then moved closer, but I had to be discreet because that crowd was also hostile to the media.
Yeah.
So I came closer, and then I think I heard him saying that he's from East London, which is now Kukompo. And that's okay. They let him go. And then again, as we were walking, there were women also who were part of the marches, who I then saw them going to a young girl. I mean, she's probably like also like a teenager or just early in her 20s. They also went to her, approached her and asked her for her ID. And I saw her taking out her green ID book and showing it to them. And after they had left, I went to her. I was like, are you okay? Because she also looked scared. Like she was close to tears. I was like, are you okay? And she was like, she's fine. And then she started explaining to me, she's from Mpumalanga, and she showed me her ID book and we parted ways. And then subsequent to that, we met, I think, 3 men along that route that they were walking to I don't know where they were going, but they were just marching. The first man, I think he's also just elderly, you know. He was walking there. I mean, I think that man was not even paying attention to what was going on. He was just walking. And suddenly they sprinted to him, Graham, pinned him to the wall and started throwing punches, and those who were carrying sticks started hitting him. And then one of the people that was leading the march then went and tried to protect this man, and others were were chasing them away. And in that instant, the police came. And I have to emphasize this point, Graham, that police were so quick. It was like they could smell when there was trouble. And the police came and they took that man. I took a video that News 24 posted in one of our socials and put him on the back of the van. And after that, just maybe 10 minutes after that, we met another young man with dreadlocks, was wearing a striped shirt. Within seconds, colleagues, he was on the floor. They were kicking him, they were hitting him, and the police van came again. And by the time he got up, his lips were swollen and they were bloody, was put on a van. And I think one of the things that really broke my heart, and I have to say it broke my heart because we are human beings before we are journalists, and when you cover such intense stories, there are things that are going to break your heart. We came across a man in Yeoville, and this is the street where most of the chaos happened. This man, they went to him, very dark skin. Oh, I also have to say this, Graham, that they were not asking these people any questions. They were not saying, not that it is right, but they were not asking them, where are you from or whatever. It's only that girl that they had asked her to produce her ID. But with this man, they just attack. So this man that we met, the last man that they had attacked, they came across him and they're like, they started saying Vimba, so they would call Vimba. And people on the street who were standing with that man, they said, he is homeless and he is mentally unstable. And they didn't care, Graham.
Sure.
They started, pinned the man on the wall and they were wanting to attack him, and people kept on saying there were women in Nebia who kept on screaming, no, stop. And the man, you could see that he's disorientated, he doesn't know what to do, he's overwhelmed. And I remember one of the men, as they were now letting him go, one of the men with his long stick hit this man on the head, and then he walked away. But it was on this street, Graham, that they also broke into 2 homes, and they had claimed that there were people who had thrown stones at them and had run into these 2 homes.
Yeah, and you showed these pictures. I just wanted to add, for anybody who's trying to picture this in their mind, Bongekile shared these pictures with the news team. These homes are clearly ransacked. You can see the doors have been broken down. There's glass littered everywhere, right?
Yes, Graham. So they removed the steel gate in one of the homes. They removed the steel gate, went inside, and I was standing outside the yard because I didn't want to get in case they get agitated when they see me with and I was wearing a big a t-shirt reading News 24. I could hear them breaking glass, and there was just within minutes, there was commotion. And I remember distinctly a woman who was wearing a pink pinafore coming out of one of the rooms there, carrying a bag. I think she had clothes or whatever in it. And she came out carrying this bag after going into this house. And there was also, I remember a tall man who was wearing a leather jacket coming out, and under his arm, he had an iron. And they went in. I don't know what they were trying to look for. I think they were trying. And in that yard, there was also a spaza shop. So they were also trying to break the spaza shop. But how the spaza shop is built is that the steel bars are so strong that they couldn't get in. They left that house. They went to the opposite house. Even there, they started breaking. And then after, when they have left, I went into those homes only to discover, Graham, that in one of the rooms that they actually broke the window, there was a mother with her young twin girls who are 3 years old. So when she could hear that they were breaking the gate, she ran into one of the rooms. So it's back rooms. So she ran into one of the rooms when there was a man, and the other lady joined him. And she told me that when they got to that room, she put her babies under the bed to hide them, who were obviously hysterical and scared. And then they stood by the door. But as they were standing against the door, the 3 of them, these marchers were trying to break that door, but they couldn't get in. So the 2 rooms that they broke into, the owners of those rooms were at work. One of the owners actually arrived when I was still there. They had ransacked their buildings. They had opened fridges. They had opened they had opened containers with meal and stuff. I don't know what they were looking for, but it is in the opposite house where they broke the doors and they found this couple, and the woman told me that they had asked her to produce her ID. She produced her ID. They took her ID, and then they started ransacking their room, and her husband had 1.5 on him, which he was going to use to buy a car battery. They took it. The woman had put 7,000 under the pillow because she was meant to pay rent yesterday. They found that and they took it. They went in the other rooms in the house, broke the doors. Lord knows what they were looking for. In this house, there were also children. The youngest child who was there was 9 months old. So, Graham, I know that government has come out to say that mainly things were peaceful and yes, of course, maybe, and Sakhiseni was speaking about the experience, but what I experienced was heartless. What I experienced was inhumane. What I experienced, no human being should have gone through that. No babies should grow up with the trauma of strangers barging into their private space and threatening them the way that they did. And I do believe that in that march, there were elements of anarchy, there were elements of criminality, because why then do you steal people's belongings if you say that your march was peaceful, and if you say that your march wanted to achieve whatever these marches are meant to achieve?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're safe, Bongekile, because us as journalists, when we go out into the field, sometimes, we don't think about our safety. And our colleague, Yusuf Hassan, he was roughed up. He was assaulted by some in the crowd who were demanding.
I was with him.
Yeah.
I was with him, Graham.
Take us to that moment very quickly.
So he was driving with the car, and I was walking with the people. And then suddenly, as we were walking, I see they're approaching the Media 24 car, and there are these men that are rounding him up. So I go, and I'm like, what's going on? So I think by the time I had noticed what he has beautifully and tragically explained in his piece in News 24 today, those parts I had missed. But when I turned to see, there was like this tall man who was standing there with others. I said to him, my brother, I was like, what are you doing? And they're like, no, he lied about us on TikTok. So I said to him, he's a journalist, he's with me, he's my colleague. And then that's when he came to me. He's like, no, my sister, you need to understand that this man lied to us. And I was trying to say to him that he needs to be discreet because other people are not going to be kind, what. And that was the first time that they tried to attack him. And then the second time when you were in Uville again, they wanted to attack him again because he was taking videos. He was not even taking videos of the marchers. He was just taking videos. And I remember one of the guys with a stick saying to him, you must stop this. And then they started being hostile to him. And again, I was like, you know what? He's my colleague. And I was like, Yusuf, because I can see that this crowd is hostile to you. And they started asking him for his ID. Where is he from? And I was like, just go in the car. But he was so brave. And he was like, look, I'm not feeling unsafe. I'm a journalist. I am doing my job. But that's just how hostile that crowd was. I have to add, Graham, before I hand over to you, that even in that, in Yuval, we also experienced them hitting an Uber scooter driver.
Yes.
They didn't ask anything. They just started beating him. Luckily, he was wearing a helmet and they were starting to push him. And they were doing this in front of the police. And the police were so quick. I have to commend the police who were with that crowd because they were so quick and they didn't mess around.
Right. Bongekile, thank you so much for bringing us to those two critical moments throughout your experience yesterday. And I can't believe some of the rhetoric that has been finding itself online in regards to our coverage on the ground. I mean, we had journalists in every part of the country. Some people claiming what we've been reporting is fake news. How can it be fake news if we've got actual video evidence of these things? And that has been displayed across our social media and in our reporting over the last 48 hours or so. Sakhiseni, thank you so much for being patient. As we speak, folks, the breaking news from Nat Joints and the SAPS is that 900 people have been arrested on June 30th. Now, obviously, the question would be, what is the numbers in terms of those who are undocumented illegal immigrants? As far as what I can make out from our reporting via Alex Mitchley via Pretoria, is that the majority of those arrested were undocumented migrants. There were also arrests, however, for public violence, harbouring undocumented migrants and business robberies at spaza shops and looting. And just in regards to what Bongekile relayed to us about the experience of homes being raided, specifically in Yeovil, Nat Joints says some arrests have been made in that regard, but also no concrete figures as there. Sakhiseni, coming back to you with March, Jacinta Ngubisi Zuma, we heard from the various leaders. They're going to return. For the next 6 months, there's going to be demonstrations every Thursday. However, in my mind's eye, I'm not convinced that it's going to be well subscribed. Because, our economy needs to trudge on. People need to make money. And a lot of South Africans live hand to mouth. I don't think it's going to be huge numbers like we've seen on June 30th. Although, what did Jacinta tell us? That it wasn't a national shutdown. Sakhiseni, what else can we sort of take away from those speeches?
Yes, no, indeed. She did mention that, from now on, every Thursday is going to be a march, of which I don't think the numbers are going to be the same as they were yesterday. I don't think the numbers will be the same, considering that, a lot of people were not working today. Some of the companies then decided to lay off workers for a day. So in terms of the numbers, it's not going to be massive. I think it might be for first week, but most probably the numbers are going to decrease eventually. And she did mention that, from now on, this was not actually a national shutdown. there will be a national shutdown in about 3 months' time, where they will bring in the country to a standstill, should the government still not be willing to meet their demand, of which the main demand is for undocumented foreigners to leave, some strict measures on the borders as well. So she did raise a couple of things on that. But all in all, in terms of the marches being held every Thursday, I mean, I don't think, I share the same sentiment. It's not going to be possible, considering that people need to go and apply for a job. You complain that people are not employed. Then when are they going to get an opportunity to go apply for jobs whenever every Thursday they're going to be out for protest? So we just have to wait and see in terms of how will that unfold on next week, Thursday.
Moving to Durban's old drive-in, what's the situation like this morning? Do you have any eyes on, the stream of foreigners still waiting to be repatriated back home? I know from yesterday's reporting that Mayor's Walk in Pietermaritzburg, a lot of the Malawians that had been camped out there, by the time the marches had ended, also peacefully, a lot of those foreigners had already left that area. What does it look like in Durban this morning?
I think in the same case with Durban, they already started now, the municipality, with the cleanup operation to remove the tents, some of the facilities that were there, including the toilets, and they're already starting to close the site. When I drove past this morning, I noticed that the site's completely empty now. And also, I think the same case with Pietermaritzburg as well. They did mention that in Pietermaritzburg, that they wanted to close the site as early as possible to just before June 30, to make sure that it's not people are not on the property. Remember that the property is not gated, so there were fears that the marchers will be marching to this very same location. There was the same case with the drive-in. Then the city pushed to make sure that everyone is taken to Musina before 30, and that was the case yesterday. As we drove past this morning, we noticed that they already started to close the site.
Yeah, Sakhiseni, what do you feel like, in your learned, informed opinion, about being on the ground, speaking to various people, being in the thick of it, seeing the harsh reality of not what only South Africans have to go through in trying to eke out a living, but also, how difficult it is for, immigrants coming to this country, hoping for greener pastures from other parts of Africa where, their situations are not great at home either. What are the root causes? How does this thing get sorted out? And is government doing enough? I know it's a loaded question, but I thought I'd give you your final sort of musings on this. Sakhiseni, you're welcome to go first.
Yes, no, I think the issue is far rooted than what everyone think it is. Obviously, the main issue is that the country has a lot of undocumented foreign nationals. But one of the issues that needs to be addressed is how we address that. I mean, people that come from outside the country to our country for greener pastures, when they have documents, I think that should be respected, because we do have people that are in different countries, like in Australia, in the UK, some of them are teaching in Asia. So obviously, we don't want them to receive the negative treatment that we are, as a country, are giving foreign nationals, because in this case there were incidences where, whether undocumented or documented, you as a foreign national, you would be attacked, as we saw in Pietermaritzburg. They didn't care whether you're documented or not; they just attacking people that are foreign nationals. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done, ensuring that we sort out our borders, ensure that we deal with undocumented foreign nationals as a country to avoid having a situation where everything that is not going right in our country is now then blamed to foreign nationals. Your issue of unemployment, people are complaining, saying foreign nationals taking jobs. The issue of crime, they blaming foreign nationals. So we need to do more to avoid people in our country having to blame foreign nationals for whatever that is wrong that's happening in our country.
Yeah, scapegoating doesn't always help. Common enemy in the political eyes. Those are all textbook issues, right? Sakhiseni, you're welcome to drop off. Thank you so much for joining the lead. I really do appreciate it, and stay safe out there as you continue this, journey of reporting on this phenomenon at the moment. I really do appreciate your time. Bongekile, you've got the final word. I mean, you just heard from Sakhiseni, but I know you've got quite a learned opinion. You've touched on this in another edition of Real Politically here on News 24, and it got a lot of engagement. Jeepers, I think up to 300 comments on that YouTube edition. Your view here, just as we end off, you got the final word.
Yeah, Graham, and I think this is such a complex conversation, and you see even when you watch online what people are saying, it's not a straight up and down issue that you can it's got a lot of legs. And I think I'm glad you referred to our video on Realpolitik where Pumelelo tried to brilliantly to try and put the issues to table. And one of the things is that, Graham, we have to acknowledge that on both ends, the countries where people are coming from and South Africa, we have a rule of law, and the rule of law has to be, respected to the letter. And as South Africa, we have to shoulder the blame that within our public service, we are harboring criminals, people who will allow people to buy their way into South Africa. And when these people get into South Africa, then your mother or your brother, you as a person who works in the border, now complains that foreign nationals are taking our jobs and all these other issues that people have raised. But we have to acknowledge that we are part of the problem as South Africans because we close our ears, we close our eyes to criminal elements. And then when things don't go our way, then we cry foul. But also our government, we have laws that have been drafted. We need the government to enforce the laws, Graham. We need the government to enforce the laws for things to not escalate to this level where we find ourselves at right now as a country, where our neighbors across the world, we are seen as this uncaring and inhumane country because our government has failed to do what it has to do. And Pumelelo raised an important point in our discussion to say that President Ramaphosa, when he's having conversations with his counterpart, he needs to be firm to say, my country cannot shoulder the responsibility because you have allowed for your countries to deteriorate to the levels that you cannot take care of your citizens. Because what we often see, Graham, is that when the president meets with these people, I think just last week, he was meeting with African presidents. It's always smiles and handshakes, and the elephant in the room is not being discussed, Graham. The ANC, for example, because they are still holding on to these ideological sister party ties that are not serving us. Because when you go, you must be able to tell Mnangagwa that
he took the words right out of my mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah, he took the words right out of my mouth.
Yes, you have to say to Mnangagwa, don't go and on Mnangagwa's private farm and shake hands and be happy. Speak about the real issues that are confronting South Africa and that are confronting your country and say, fix those. Let's talk about the push issues. Let's talk about the pull issues. So I think, honestly, Graham, it's a complex thing. It's a complex situation that we find ourselves in. But like what Sakhiseni says, it's easy for us to shift the blame to foreign nationals. And statisticians will break it down to you that how many foreign nationals do we have in South Africa and what jobs are they taking? So it's easy for us to shift the blame. But I think that we are not having the conversations about the real issues, and those in government are not having the conversations. And oftentimes we are very reactional in our ways, but we will go and support Frelimo and we'll shake hands with people of Frelimo, but we are not going to speak about, can you fix your country so that people, and Graham, we have to be honest, no one will leave their home if things are fine.
100%.
And that is why you find that in South Africa, a lot of us are not leaving the country. Many of us are leaving because we are going to Europe, or we are going, we're going for greener pastures, but not because things are so bad in our country like they are in neighboring countries. And Graham, just to close it off, the president of Malawi was here for 2 weeks on to receive private medical care, while people from his country were sleeping on pavements. Babies who are 4 months old were sleeping on pavements, and he did not even once come out to say, my people, I am making plans, I have seen your plight. And it speaks exactly to the uncaring leadership we have in our African countries, that people can look after themselves, their own interests, the people in their circles, and they neglect the majority of the people in those nations. And now we are finding foreign nationals coming to South Africa, and South Africans using their energy and their disdain for the government that we have to shift the blame to foreign nationals.
Yeah. As we speak, I had to just double check because I know that there had been moves afoot. The crocodile, of course, Emmerson Mnangagwa, just this week, Bongekile, if you haven't seen the headlines, Zimbabwe's parliament, the upper house voted now in favor of the constitutional amendments, which will give Uncle Mnangagwa, he's going to stay in office until 2030 if they pass this.
I've been following that story quite closely, Graham. And again, the people who voted Mnangagwa are people who are benefiting from his regime. They are not thinking about the millions and millions of Zimbabweans who are stranded, who can't, even those who are in the country, can't make a living. They have to cross the border to buy basics, to buy bread, because bread is expensive in Zimbabwe. They can't get medication, and that is why you would have women from Zimbabwe crossing to Musina to give birth. And if you remember, a few years ago, the former MEC, now premier of Limpopo, Popi Mutiba, was screaming at a pregnant Zimbabwean woman who was giving birth in a hospital. Those women will rather risk. I think there was in Parliament, there was an oversight in the correctional services. And one of the things that came out of that was that women from Zimbabwe would rather be arrested when they are pregnant. They will commit a crime in South Africa because they want to be arrested in South Africa to give birth, because there is there is absolutely the health system there is on the ground. And across all these other African countries, our neighboring countries, we are witnessing how the rule of law and democracy is deteriorating right in front of our eyes. We are watching it now in Uganda, Graham. We are watching it now, how Museveni's son is doing as he pleases, and then people then run away from those kinds of regimes, and they come to countries like South Africa, and some of them, they come with not following the law, and then South Africans are angry, and then they want to take that. So I think it's really a complex, but it needs adults in the room, Graham. It needs people who are going to put emotions aside, who are going to put historical ties aside, and say, right now we are confronted with an issue, and how do we deal with that issue? Because you can say that some of the things that are being raised by some people are legitimate, but also it's also how do we raise issues? How we can't scapegoat people for some things that people are not doing, that our government is not doing, and then we scapegoat foreign nationals. But I think, again, for me, Kim, it is inhumane how we have treated some of these people. And I cannot imagine, as a mother of 2 children sleeping on the street with a 4-month-old baby in this cold weather, I cannot imagine, as a pregnant woman, how uncomfortable it is to be pregnant, sleeping on a pavement because you have been chased away from what you thought is a life you were building in South Africa. And I think, yes, one day history is going to judge us harshly for how, as South Africans, we have treated foreign nationals. And I know that there are a lot of people who are saying, oh, why are you speaking on behalf of foreign nationals? But at the end of the day, Ubuntu must prevail in all that we do, Graham. We are human beings before anything else.
100%. And obviously people will say what they want to say because they only want to hear what they want to hear. Bongekile,
yes,
I really do appreciate it. Thanks so much for giving us the final word there. I couldn't have put it any better. We'll chat soon. I hear your phone pinging in the background. I know you've got other deadlines to get to. We'll chat again.
Keep well. Thank you, Graham.
Bye.
And finally,
ending off with our regular segment, it's On the Stand Essay History. It's courtesy the Essay History online database. And it's Botswana's very first president, the late Sir Seretse Khama's birthday. Born on the 1st of July 1921 into royalty into what was then known as Bechuanaland by the British Empire, Khama became Bamangwanto king at just age 4 following his father's death. Khama graduated in 1944 from South Africa's well-known Fort Eyre College with a Bachelor of Arts. 4 years later, studying in London, he famously fell in love with white Englishwoman Ruth Williams. Their eventual marriage caused so much ire in apartheid South Africa in the year 1948 that Pretoria forced Britain to exile Khama to stay in England until the year 1956, when he eventually renounced his throne. Fast forward though to 1966, Khama was sworn in as independent Botswana's very first president, leading his country from an obscure, poor British protectorate to a democratic and prosperous nation, a major turnaround that's still celebrated and talked about to this day. He held that top spot until he died in his birthday month of July in the year 1980 in Gaborone. That's On This Day in SA History, courtesy the SA History Online database, and I also used the Britannica database as well to fill in some of the blanks there. Thanks so much for tuning into The Lead. We'll bring you fresh editions again soon. My name's Graham Robenheimer, and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll have The Lead.